Hey people, this is a review for the Worx WX845 Cordless Mitre Saw. Wait, Cordless Mitre Saw? Oh yes, this thing takes one of the standard Worx batteries, the same ones as I put in my strimmer, my leaf blower, my drill driver, and even my mini rotary tool. Now this thing is going to replace my old Evolution Mitre Saw, which is a lovely saw, but I have a small workshop as you can see, and this one is just smaller, more portable, which just suits me better. A disclaimer, Worx did give me this tool to review, but like all the other reviews, they haven't paid me. They wanted me to be completely honest, and they didn't even want to check my review before I published it. Fools! No, seriously, that's the sort of integrity that makes me love working with Worx. So let's skip the unboxing, as it's not 2010 anymore, and nobody wants to see people open a box, right? So first thoughts. It's pretty small. It's approximately 91 centimeters wide, by 76 centimeters deep and 50 centimeters high at its full extent, but it folds all the way down to 56 centimeters wide by 64 centimeters deep and only 34 centimeters high when not in use. Yeah, that's pretty small. So it's great for being portable and not taking up lots of room. But how does that affect its cut sizes? Now you can cut stuff up to 70 millimeters thick and 220 millimeters wide if cutting straight using the slide. Now that's about 8 by 2 3/4 inches. Or 155 millimeters wide if you're cutting at a 45-degree mitre, which is smaller than my last mitre saw, yes, but definitely big enough to do all the stuff that I typically need. Now the mitre angle can be set to anything, but there are these little notches that lock it nicely into the popular angles like 45 degrees, 15 degrees and 22.5 degrees. And it works like all the other mitre saws that I've ever seen. You unscrew the front knob and then you lift the little lever to move it where you want it, ensuring to tighten it, of course, all up afterwards. The blade tilt is pretty easy to use too. It goes from 0 to 45 degrees, but it does limit the thickness of your workpiece to as low as 41 millimeters. Again, that's probably fine for most stuff that I need. Just unscrew the large knob at the back to loosen it and tilt the angle to what you need. Fairly standard stuff. The blade tilt is just to the left, but the mitre is both 45 degrees left and right, so it's really useful for those small compound cuts. There are these little supports that fit in each end too, which can help support some of the smaller cuts that you have, but really long items, of course, still need to use some kind of support like these rollers. There's a hex key that doesn't seem to fit anything. Ah, okay, it's for changing the blade. Now one of the features that I really love is this thing called the hold down bar, which they call the extra hand. I thought it was a bit gimmicky at first, but once you get used to it, it can really help you make some safe and secure cuts. Now instead of the typical single hold down that grabs the workpiece on just one side, it's a bar that forces down onto each end, as long as the piece is long enough, of course. Those tiny cuts it won't quite do. Now the hole is there for the standard size hold down, but it doesn't seem to come with a standard hold down. I'm happy enough though, because I do love their hold down system. And this thing gets in the way and you want to remove it. There's two little clips at the back securing it. Now just open those and the whole thing comes out. And while it doesn't come with the standard hold downs, there are holes each side so you can fit them. Nice to have that option. Worx claim that it frees up a hand, but I still feel that having one hand on the bar just to make sure it's really secure feels like a much safer cut, and there's almost no chance of the workpiece being picked up by the saw blade at the end of the cut. Now that's happened to me before and it's flipping scary. Speaking of safety, this saw features something that I rarely see on mitre saws, in fact on most tools, a guard that doesn't make me want to yank it off and smash it with a hammer. It's simple and it doesn't get in the way for most cuts. Well done, whoever designed this. All the basic features you expect to see on a mitre saw are there, like a locking pin to keep the saw secure during transit, and a depth stop. Oh, and there's a laser, just in case you want to play with your cat, or I guess cut things straight. In fact, they packed all the essential features into what is quite a small saw, and left out all the gimmicky stuff that I never really needed, like a work light, for example. Swapping batteries in and out is easy, and they don't get in the way of anything either. I've put a link in the video description below to where you can buy this saw. Please check it out, but also shop around for the best price. Now, as with most Worx tools, it's also got a 3-year warranty. I suspect that'll rarely be needed though, because this thing seems quite well built. It's pretty heavy too, actually, for its size, 9.5 kilograms, which is about 21 pounds, which is something I like, because lightweight risks moving around, and yet it does have an aluminium base, so it's not so heavy that you can't actually pick it up. If there is one criticism, it is the fact that it really needs a handle. Considering its small size and the fact that it's battery powered, it suggests that it's aimed at being a portable tool, something to be carried around, but carrying it around can be a little bit awkward. Now, the footprint is also slightly too big for my little bench, but I do have a small bench. Now, Worx do also do a really nice table called the Pegasus work table, and apparently it fits onto that really nicely, something I maybe need to look into. So the important stuff, how does it cut? Very well. I've put a few things into this saw so far, including 4-inch hardwood, scaffold boards, 2x4s, and it's not had any issues with anything yet. The blade it comes with is a 216mm 40 tooth, and it leaves a very smooth cut. Now, while they don't supply a metal cutting blade with it, you can cut a few soft metals like aluminium, just thin stuff of course, but it is better if you probably get yourself a proper metal cutting blade for this. Now, accuracy is pretty good. The blade that it came with was completely square to the table, and the slider runs nicely parallel. The mitre and the tilt angles also seem to be as good as you'd expect from, well, most mitre saws, to be honest. The blade insert plate has a pretty large gap, which I'm not a fan of. It does look like it's screwed in nicely, however, so it could be replaced easily. However, I use a zero clearance insert plate jig to get some really nice cuts, and this works really well on the saw, especially if you want to cut small pieces. What I've come up with is fairly simple: a straight piece of beech attached to a thin MDF board and then clamped onto the back fence. Then just cut into it and make a hole almost exactly the same width as the blade curve. Add some sandpaper either side and you've got a nice grippy surface, perfect for those little cuts. The bag captures most of the sawdust, but it's not perfect, and it does really benefit from having a proper dust extractor on there, or a shop vac or something. So you can't do a proper review video on something like a tool without actually making something with that tool. So let's make something that my daughter's been pestering me to make for ages: a bug hotel. The plan here is to use some pallet wood, because as you can see, I've got loads of it spare. I cut the pallet wood into 6 pieces with 60-degree cuts and made a simple hexagon shape. It should be noted that pallet wood is often not ideal for bug hotels, as it can contain lots of stuff that could potentially be harmful for our little insecty friends. Now, most pallets are marked up, which give you an idea whether they've been heat treated or chock full of pesticides. Now, these say they've been heat treated, so should be fine, but it never hurts to use appropriate protection such as a respirator, because you don't want to be breathing in this stuff. It can be nasty. Nails can also be hidden inside, so I like to check mine with a metal detector before using the stuff. The 6 finished pieces need to be glued together, and I found the easiest way to do this is to use some tape, join them all together flat on my workbench, add your favourite wood glue. In this case I'm using Gorilla Glue, well, as it works really well for the outside projects, and then just lift it up and form the hexagon, adding some extra tape in to keep it all in place. Now ideally you should also clamp it up for that extra strong joint, but this will be fine for something that's, well, it's just going to last for a few years. You can leave it backless, but I like to add a back onto it to provide more shelter for the insects. This is easy enough to make with a little bit of scrap plywood. Simply trace out the design with a pencil and then cut out that design with the bandsaw. It can be stuck into place with glue, but if you're impatient like me, you can use a nail gun. Why, this Worx cordless nail and staple gun that I happen to have handy seems to work really well. A final sand all over the whole piece ensures there's no splinters for whoever installs the thing, or indeed the bugs. Why, this Worx Cordless Sander that happens to have a selection of different attachments, including an orbital sander that I happen to have nearby, also seems to work really well. You shouldn't really use any finishes because it could potentially harm the insects and the smell could put them off, but if you want to make it look a little bit nicer, you could paint it with some watercolour paints. Be sure to put it somewhere that's not too exposed from the elements and clean it out each season. Now you can use metal hangers or string to hang it, but I found a nice location on the fence that I could just screw it into. Some twigs shoved in there and some bamboo cut to length, and you have an interesting selection of homes for visiting bugs. I'll do another video on bug hotels and bee hotels at some point, because there's a lot of misinformation out there which can even cause harm to our little winged insecty friends. If you have any tips on how to build bug hotels, please pop them in the comments and I might be able to use them in that video. So the Worx Mitre Saw, would I buy one? Yes, very much so. It's small, it's powerful, portable, and pretty much does all the cuts someone like me needs. Now maybe if I was cutting bigger stuff on site, for example, I'd go for something bigger, something like my old Evolution Mitre Saw with its mains power, but that's not what I need. And in my opinion, the average DIYer won't need anything too much bigger than this either. So, well done Worx, it's a good one. It's a bit messy, but you get 4.5 pigeons, and that's just because of the lack of the handle and the slightly gappier insert plate. Thanks for watching, everybody. Right, thumbnail time. How's this?
Do the YouTube face.
I'm not doing the YouTube face. No, it's silly, and it's been done to death.
Yeah, go on, do it.
Let's try a little bit of subtle pointing.
Yeah.
Nailed it.